The story opens on a quiet city street at night where a brightly lit convenience store glows against the darkness. Inside, two figures stand in the middle of a fantasy-style expedition. A blonde woman in ornate armor, Eve, turns to her companion, a red-haired swordsman, and says, "Let's wrap up today's expedition here." With a confident smile, she adds, "Good work." Suddenly, the scene shifts. We find ourselves inside the very same convenience store, but from a completely different perspective. A young man with dark hair and a blue and black hoodie is standing at the counter, holding his phone. The store clerk, an older man in a green jacket, cheerfully welcomes him with a loud, "Welcome!" Young-jin is a 29-year-old convenience store part-timer who has worked there for 3 years. He has a herniated disc and a staggering 9,999 hours of playtime in the game DZ Saga. The older man, the boss and convenience store owner, greets him with a teasing smile. Young-jin looks up, confused, and asks, "Boss, it's not shift change yet. What brings you here? And why are you using my full name with all those scary titles?" A sudden realization hits him and he panics, thinking, "Don't tell me." A colorful thought bubble pops up, showing a girl making a peace sign, and the boss jokingly asks if Young-jin is finally replacing himself with a super gorgeous new part-timer. But then the boss drops a bombshell. He calmly states, "No, I'm immigrating to Australia." Young-jin is completely stunned, letting out a shocked, "Huh?" The boss smiles warmly and declares, "So this convenience store, it's yours." Young-jin is left dumbfounded again, repeating, "Huh?" The boss continues, explaining that he knows how things are for Young-jin, so he'll make the takeover fee as affordable as possible. Then he asks a profound question. "Young-jin, what's been your lifelong dream?" Young-jin, without hesitation, answers, "To be a convenience store owner." The boss looks at him with a gentle smile, standing in the aisle lined with snacks, and says, "Go make your dream come true." Young-jin is still in disbelief, asking, "But why offer this opportunity to me, of all people?" The boss explains his reasoning, revealing that he's gone through 27 different part-timers at the store, but he's never seen anyone as hard-working as Young-jin. Young-jin starts to glow with pride, thinking to himself, "That is true. I'm great with customers, never mess up the register, excel in cleaning, flawless at stocking, and handle deliveries perfectly. I really am the top ace." But his pride is immediately shattered by a heavy vertical effect as the boss adds a final blunt punchline. "Even crying tears of joy can't stop your love for that trash game." Overwhelmed with emotion, Young-jin bursts into tears, clutching his phone and running out the door, shouting, "I'm going to go for a quick walk." The boss just chuckles to himself, touching his nose with a smile. Outside, Young-jin walks across a street crossing, still in awe. He mutters to himself, "I can't believe a day like this has actually come. Phew, today is my lucky day." But his luck is about to run out. Suddenly, blinding yellow headlights flash directly at him. He screams in terror, A truck! Anything but a truck!" He tries to dodge, but it's too late. "Where is it trying to send me?" he cries out as he's violently struck.
He is sent flying through the air, his body slamming into a large GT delivery truck parked nearby. He crashes onto the pavement, his phone flying from his hand and skittering across the ground. Lying amidst a spreading pool of his own blood, he manages a weak curse. Fuck. His mind races as he realizes the cruel irony. Getting double-teamed by trucks is a bit. Despite his critical condition, Young-jin looks at his cracked, blood-splattered phone screen. A message glows from it. "Congratulations, you have passed 10,000 hours of playtime in D/Z Saga." With a final, defiant thought, he accepts his fate, thinking, "Fine. If I'm getting sent to another world anyway, let it be an OP protagonist or a harem story." His hand slowly reaches out, fingers trembling, before everything fades to red. In a dark, imposing hall, a blond man sits alone on a chair at the center of the room, bathed in a single spotlight. A voice declares that, as of this moment, he is being stripped of his position as student council president, along with all his privileges within the academy. The blond man, Wolfram von Lohengrin, looks down with a faint, unsettling smile. Above him, a female student with blonde hair and blue eyes steps forward, pointing a finger directly at him and coldly asks, "Do you have any last words?" Wolfram's eyes widen slightly as he recognizes her. Internally, he realizes that woman, Eve. He clenches his fist, his mind racing as he understands the situation. The narrative text confirms it. He has possessed a character in DZ Saga. He bitterly realizes he failed to get the OP or harem routes because the guy he possessed, Wolfram, dies in the prologue. Eve, the student council president, sits at a high desk, flanked by other students, and declares, "Do you have any last words, Wolfram von Lohengrin?" Wolfram looks up, a determined light in his eyes, and retorts with a confident smirk, "Humph, you cannot kick me out, because I'll be leaving on my own 2 feet. He leans forward, his expression turning dark and serious, and adds, "You will not be able to bear the darkness of this academy. I will return." Suddenly, the scene flashes to a brutal memory. An enraged student screams at him, "You said all we had to do was trust you. You said you'd let us graduate. Die! Die!" The student viciously kicks and stomps on a fallen figure. A narration box explains that Wolfram, relying solely on his authority as the Emperor's son, ruled the academy with tyranny, and his end was utterly pathetic. Everyone thought he was gone for good after exiting in the prologue, but Wolfram's face flashes in the memory, his eyes sharp and a drop of sweat on his brow as he thinks, he reappears in Act 5. Back in the present, Eve continues her final judgment, pronouncing, "Wolfram von Lohengrin, this is my final mercy. Leave the academy and live a quiet life. Rest in peace. Goodbye." A glowing, ethereal arc of light follows her words. Wolfram sits in silence, then a slow, calculating smile forms on his face. He mutters to himself, "First, smile like you have something up your sleeve." Sweat pours down his face as his grip on his own pants tightens, his hands trembling. He thinks frantically, "If I leave now, I'm getting stabbed to death." Think. He looks at the group of students standing before him and desperately concludes, "I have to stay in the academy somehow." His thoughts race as he analyzes Eve. What do I do? Eve von Lohengrin. She gives off a cold and heartless impression, but unlike her appearance, she's actually a model student with a nerdy, socially awkward side. A confident grin spreads across his face as he decides, "I have to use that to my advantage." He then looks up at her and asks, "You're kicking me out?" Eve, visibly flustered, replies, "Yes, I will tell you once more. By imperial decree, your authority as student council president and all your privileges are stripped as of this moment." Wolfram repeats the word, "stripped." "Stripped, you say?" Eve looks at him with a confused, sweat-dropping expression and answers, "Yes, stripped." Wolfram leans in again, his tone mischievous. "Stripped, indeed." Eve starts to lose her composure, stammering, "Stripped."
"Yes, strip." Wolfram cuts her off, shouting, "What are you trying to pull here?" Then he throws his head back and screams at the top of his lungs, "Stripped!" The sheer volume of his outburst causes Eve to flinch, her face going pale and blank with shock as sweat drops fly around her.
Eve von Lohengrin slams her hand down, her face flushed with anger, and shouts, "Stop struggling and just get out, Wolfram!" Wolfram, sitting calmly with a sweat drop on his forehead, simply replies, "No, I cannot do that." He leans back, placing his hand under his chin with a confident smirk, and declares, "I will not be leaving the academy." Eve stammers in confusion, "What?" Wolfram looks at her coolly and instructs, "Eve von Lohengrin, read the imperial decree again. Where exactly does it state my expulsion?" Eve, completely taken aback, mutters, "Huh?" A large student behind her shouts, But it says you're stripped of your privileges." Wolfram stands up, his shadow looming, and delivers a smug internal monologue. Who's the veteran player that memorized the obscure Zeppelin Academy rulebook nobody reads? That's right, me. Out loud, he calmly repeats, "Yes." He explains, along with Wolfram von Lohengrin's position as student council president, all privileges are stripped. That is what's written. The students look on in stunned silence. Wolfram then asks, "Do you remember Article 1, Paragraph 8 of the Zeppelin Academy rules?" Eve looks down, sweating, as she tries to recall, "Huh? Wait, Article 1, Paragraph 8. If it's Article 1, Paragraph 8. Wolfram recites the rule as he steps forward. From the moment of enrollment, every student of Zeppelin inherently holds the fundamental right to remain a student of the Academy, and all students are equal under the rules, with the sole exception of the student council president. He turns to face the group, his expression sharpening, and declares, "In other words,
Being a student of the Academy isn't a privilege. It is an inherent right and duty of an enrolled student. Eve clenches her fists, yelling, "What nonsense are you—" Wolfram's face turns dark and menacing as he drives his point home, meaning, you should stop paying attention to someone like me and go prepare for the next student council. A tall, silver-haired female student with pointed ears suddenly steps forward, her face contorted in rage, and yells, "There's no way you can pull that off. The VIP suite in the Gladstein dormitory, your monthly allowance of 80 million rin, and even the special grading privileges. There is no way an incompetent fool like you can survive after losing all those privileges." Wolfram looks at her without a hint of fear and says, "I suppose you think that, as a royal, I couldn't possibly endure a life without privileges." The silver-haired student scoffs, "Obviously." Wolfram turns his head, a sly grin on his face, and retorts, "And what if I do?" She is stunned, letting out a confused, "Huh?" Wolfram then raises his head, and the image of a dark-haired man, Young-jin, flashes behind him, holding a glowing phone. With unwavering confidence, Wolfram declares, "I will survive." He steps closer to the silver-haired student and coldly commands, "Why are you judging my capabilities as you please? Apologize." Overwhelmed by his sudden authority, she bows her head and whispers, I'm sorry." But Eve suddenly burst forward, grabbing the girl by her shoulders and screaming, "Don't apologize to him, Sylvia." Wolfram watches with a malicious grin as Eve furiously snarls at him, "Wolfram, you snake-tongued bastard." Wolfram simply chuckles and says, "Yes, congratulations, Eve. Your rebellion was a success. That seat is yours now." Eve glares at him in disbelief.
Wolfram then looks down, a sad smile crossing his face as he thinks, "If I had possessed the protagonist, Kelters, I might have been able to stay by your side, Eve, the main heroine of the Imperial route. Unfortunately, we were complete strangers now." He turns around, his cloak trailing behind him, and casually remarks, "If there's nothing else, I'll take my leave." As he walks away, Eve desperately calls out, "Wait!" Wolfram stops, a heavy shadow covering his face. Eve shouts after him, "Why are you staying at the Academy even after having all your privileges taken away? Seriously, why?" Wolfram looks back over his shoulder, his expression unreadable, and answers cryptically, "Who knows? Maybe I still have an unfulfilled dream. Let's leave it at that." Eve is frozen, whispering, "What?" Wolfram clutches his chest and adds softly, "That seat is heavy." He walks toward the bright, open double doors, raising his hand in a final wave, and says, "Let's both do our best from where we stand." The doors seal shut behind him with a heavy thud. Eve sits alone on the grand chair, her eyes wide and her expression twisted in frustration. She takes a deep breath and quietly repeats to herself, "Student Council President." Then, with a burst of pent-up anger, she screams at the top of her lungs, "Wolfram!" On the other side of the door, Wolfram walks down a grand, red-carpeted hallway, his head held high. A title card flashes across the screen, DZ Saga Wolfram Arc. The text continues, Academy Convenience Store Owner Route. A close-up of his face shows a small, confident smile as the narration concludes with a single word, Start.